Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service, jbiztechphilly.com, and now columnist for the Jewish Press.
Yeah, I have a column called The Albany Beat, and I talk about how government relates to the Jewish community, or it doesn't, as the case may be, but it's a real honor to be able to add something to a national Jewish weekly publication, the oldest one in the country. So,
excellent. Well, who do we have today,
Well,
though?
today we have someone who I've been following and love to have the honor of having him on the show. He's the Schenectady County Clerk, John Woodward. So, John, welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you very much.
You know, we've had the Albany County Clerks and other county clerks on, and now, you know, we really are pleased and find it a pleasure to have you on the show.
Great.
So,
You know, I asked this many times to the Albany County Clerk, but just for our viewers also, just to be aware, what is your, tell us your job description. What does a county clerk do?
I'll boil it down to three fairly cohesive areas because we pretty much do a litany of all kinds of different things. And it seems like within county government, when they didn't know who to give a particular task to, they wound up gifting it to the county clerk. But I'll give you an overview. What we do is we are the clerk of the Supreme and County Court within Schenectady County. So it means that we're involved in all kinds of civil litigation. We're involved in processing all the paperwork that goes with people being involved in civil lawsuits when you begin to sue
You're
someone.
like the recorder, like the secretary,
Yes.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, the job has been given that responsibility by the state constitution that every county have a county clerk and that they are indeed the constitutional clerks of the county court. So a lot of what we do is work with attorneys and various people in the legal profession that are involved mainly in civil matters. Criminal matters usually are handled more by the sheriff and the district attorney, but in terms of the county clerk, we're the place that you go to start a lawsuit against someone. And what happens is essentially the paperwork is filed, we process it, we work with the court system. We're not involved in the adjudication of issues. That's clearly under the purview of the various judges. And what happens when the case is finally resolved, the various paperwork comes back to us. So I say we're a little bit like bookends. We're involved in the beginning of litigation and we're involved in the end of it. So we spend a great deal of time dealing with that. We're also the county recorder for records. And what that means is if you own a house and you've got a deed on a piece of property, it's filed in the county clerk's office. If you have a mortgage, with a particular bank or a lending institution, it's filed in the county clerk's office. We are kind of a centralized place in which people can record or file various records that are important to their lives and their personal lives. So it's a situation where many years ago, the clerk actually becomes a remnant of, it's actually the position evolved from medieval England, where you used to have a clerk that used to travel around with a circuit court judge. And they would record land transactions and they would be involved in court matters. So, here we are almost 900 years later and there's still somebody fulfilling that role, even from a medieval experience of England and things like that. So we're involved as the giant records keeper for the county. The third part we are involved in mainly is we run the local Department of Motor Vehicles for the state of New York. We're kind of like satellite offices within the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Well, I didn't know that means the DMV is run by the county. I just thought they were totally state-run.
There's a combination.
Not in every county. Like Albany County does not run the DMV.
There's 52 of the 62 counties that are run by county clerks, and about 10 they are run through the state district office, like here in Albany County.
I'm sure Erie County's the same way. I'm sure
Right.
Erie County might not have. Because
they're
the
very large
cities.
counties tend to have state-run. So we're involved in kind of those three areas of the courts, of the recording of land documents or court records, and running the DMV. We also do a litany of other things like passport applications. When you need a passport to travel abroad, you can come to our office. We are the registry of records for discharge for veterans. And you just previously had a guest related to the veteran agency. Many veterans, when they leave service, file what they call a DD-214, and they file it in the county clerk's office. And they may need that for property tax reductions or other such benefits that some of the veterans get. So they will oftentimes come to our office in order to receive that paperwork.
So you have birth and death records also?
We don't have birth and death.
That's health department?
Yeah, exactly. It's primarily overseen by the health department, and birth and death records are primarily handled at the city or town clerk level. We're at the county level.
Right.
So we primarily are court. We do naturalization records, though, and we also are involved in swearing in the new American citizens, which is a very exciting thing to do. I have personally, well, I've been clerk for 21 years, and I've personally sworn in over 4,000 new American citizens.
So you've run 5 times?
Six times.
6 times
yes.
you've run.
Yeah.
You must love this job. This doesn't get boring for you? I mean, how old are you, first of all?
I'm 59.
59.
So
you were,
it's
you were in your 30s.
I was 37 when I became clerk.
I mean, you know, when you're in your 30s, you know, sometimes you just want to be in your 40s. You want to have a challenge, and it doesn't seem like, you know, a mental challenge.
It actually gets a little more complicated
So-
because I was first elected to public office on the school board in 1975.
Okay.
So I just most recently celebrated my 40th year as an elected official.
Okay.
So I started off on the school board. I served 3 terms on the school board. During that time, I worked for the state legislature for 6 years.
Under who?
Well, it was Stanley Fink, as a matter of fact, was the speaker when I was there, Stanley Fink.
So 1970 what?
I was there from 79 to 85.
Okay.
And then
he was my assemblyman in Mill Basin,
Yeah,
Brooklyn.
he was a wonderful man.
He was my assemblyman, and his son Mark was a buddy of mine. So
I loved talking to him. He was the most down-to-earth politician I ever met in my life. I mean, he was the speaker of the state assembly. This is a big deal.
Well,
I mean,
it was his staff that was the problem.
Yes.
Getting to him.
Yeah.
He could be down to earth. He could be real nice, but it was his staff who were the gatekeepers and kept people away from him. I mean, I had to sit outside his office. I was in college, and I wanted to get an interview with him for the college radio station, and I had to sit outside his office literally for between 4 to 5 hours to wait for him, and I wasn't going to leave.
Right.
And if they called the Capitol Police, well, so be it. But he was my assemblyman for one thing back where I was voting in Brooklyn.
Yep.
Plus, I have every right to want to have an interview with the Speaker of the Assembly, and he can always find 5 to 10 minutes to
Absolutely.
bring someone up from their bootstraps, who's trying to make a career for themselves and be nice and kind, but his staff was the problem.
Right, and it was quite a cast of characters in those days because you had Warren Anderson as the Senate Majority Leader, you had Stanley Fink as the Assembly Speaker, and you had Governor Carey at that time, and he was, in his own way, quite the character and things. But it was a wonderful place to work for a while as a young person and get to see how government interacts, because I literally worked there from when I was like 21 to 24.
Oh, okay. Or
And then
and I was going to say, or doesn't, as the case may be, interact.
Right. It was a great education. I view it as my own kind of version of a master's degree, going to work at the state legislature for a number of years to see how things work and how they don't work, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Stanley also had a caustic wit,
Absolutely.
and he could really, with just one line, tear you down.
Yep. Yeah.
So.
He was very interesting in the fact that he had a self-awareness that the average person really didn't necessarily know who he was. I mean, he was one of the big 3 in the room that essentially established the state budgets.
Yes.
But I remember one time he said to me, John, I could be standing in a line at the movies in the middle of Brooklyn, which I've represented for a long time, and probably 90% of the people have no idea who I am. So how much of a big shot am I really? And I thought that was an interesting perspective that one would have that. So, but I worked for the legislature, and then I had an opportunity to run for office in the town of Rotterdam, where I've lived my whole life. I served 9 years as the receiver of taxes in Rotterdam, which was the tax collector's job, and it was a function of collecting, we collected $120 million worth of property taxes during the time I was there. And then our county clerk in 1994, Merritt Willey, who was the previous clerk, died, and I was fortunate enough to be appointed by Governor Mario Cuomo to the position and then ran in the next election, which was 6 or 7 months after I took office. I had to run for the full term, and I've been there ever since.
Do you ever have opponents?
The last couple elections I haven't. I had in the beginning. I've run in
So it's
6 races, and I've had 4 opponents. So the last couple of races I've
They've
run.
given up. The Republicans have given up.
Either way, I was very fortunate.
What's the Schenectady clerk? I mean, what's the temperature of Schenectady? I mean, you've seen it. You've been around, like Mark's saying, for a long time.
It's
I mean, you always hear, "Oh, GE is out," and Schenectady's is it bouncing back?
It is bouncing back. I mean, it's very profoundly bouncing back. I mean, I just look back 15 years or so ago. I mean, I came to this area from to Schenectady because my dad was a welder at GE. And when he got out of the service, that's what happened is you went and got a job in a place like Schenectady because he was a welder. And I grew up in the town of Rotterdam for that reason. My relatives are all from the Bennington, Vermont area, but you came to a place in Schenectady like an Alco or GE. What happened is they had, 50 years where the town was dependent upon the General Electric Corporation. Right. And then GE essentially started selling off their divisions, and they stopped manufacturing small appliances and stopped building turbine engines. That had a very devastating impact upon the people that lived there. The long-term jobs weren't there. So starting in the 70s, there was really a lot, it started a slow decline, and it was really terrible for 25 years. But we've seen a lot of things bounce back in the last couple of years. People have visited downtown Schenectady now. I think they're really surprised about the quality of restaurants that we have, and there's been 1 million new businesses opening. They're trying to get younger people to move in to the area with like startup companies. We have an incredible amount of visitors come to Proctor's Theater every year because they offer really quality shows and things like that. So it's something that we've worked on to start building to make the community better, and obviously we have more work to do because we have neighborhoods that desperately need more attention.
It's a phenomenon around the country. I mean, I have sons in New York, and I remember taking a person down to Brooklyn, again, like you say, 20, 25, 30 years. Brooklyn, what's going, and now you can't even buy a garage for $1 million.
My son lives in Brooklyn. My
Oh,
son
really?
lives in Bed-Stuy.
Yeah.
And when he told me
Regentrification.
5 years ago, he told me Bed-Stuy. I, of course, was thinking of the late 60s, early 70s, and I thought, oh my God, this is horrible. Yeah. I have visited it many times, and it's beautiful.
Do you know that there are $1 million condos in Bed-Stuy now? It's just like outrageous. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it's funny. The people of Brooklyn think that Brooklyn is like the center of the universe now. They don't pay attention to Manhattan. And my son, he could care less about Manhattan. He likes going to Williamsburg. He thinks that's the happening place. Yeah. And that's it. He's been down there for 5 years and has a good job and really enjoys living there. And when we go to visit, we're always impressed with how beautiful it is. But I do think that there are some problems in terms of income inequality down there, that there are a lot of middle-class people that are being forced out because
can't even buy a house.
Exactly.
There are in Crown Heights, where a lot of the Chabad organization is, there's a Schenectady Avenue.
I didn't know that.
You should go by. It's between Albany and Utica, I think. So there's a Schenectady Avenue.
The phenomena, I don't know where it started. Maybe, Mark, you can help me. You're more aware of what's happening. But it's in Brooklyn, I know, and Troy is building up, and now you say Schenectady's building up. It's just like now the it used to be, again, 20, 30 years ago, you're in the, who wants the city? Go to the suburbs. And now it's almost the opposite.
Yeah, we're actually trying to build a lot of apartment units in downtown Schenectady because we recognize that one of the keys, the solutions to some of the problems is getting people living in the city. And I know across from my motor vehicles building, they're putting in several hundred apartments in there. And the idea is get people living in downtown. That will spur retail. We already have a pretty eclectic group of restaurants and bars now, and we have a lot of arts things. And it's kind of exciting if you go to downtown Schenectady on a Friday night now. There's a lot of people out on the street. Boy, that wasn't the case 15 years ago.
Even 10 years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So
let me just point out something here, because you said, actually in your bio, it says that it was the 7th term. You were reelected to your 7th term.
I was appointed
But-
once, and I've
right,
run 6 times.
6 times,
Yeah,
okay. So I also want to, I find this fascinating. You know, we all think of Albany's mayors as having long tenures, but since 1936, when this county clerk's office was founded, there's only been 3.
Right.
And
Yeah,
you know,
we've.
it's like
I've been there 21 years. The Merritt Willie, who was there,
80 years.
right,
There's been
25.
3.
And Pink Gardner was the previous one who was there 33 years. So
And
I'm
that's-
actually like the new kid on the block. I only have 21 years of service.
Was this a guy, Pink, or a girl?
It was a
woman?
guy. He
It
was
was a guy
a
named
championship wrestler, which was a
Yeah.
big sport in
Don't
those
call a
days.
Girl over here, Mark.
It's
Yeah,
a
well,
big
he's long
sport,
gone,
and
so-
I think in those days being county clerk was more of like a part-time job. He was a monument inscriber that would sell people tombstones, and that was his kind of daytime business. And the clerk's office, you know, you're going back to the 30s. He was actually there from the middle of the Great Depression all the way to when man walked on the moon, which I just think is an incredible span of
Right.
history. I
Sure.
mean, and then he died, Mr. Willie, Merritt Willie, previous to me. He was there about almost 25 years. And like I say, I've been there 21. So we really most county clerks don't serve quite that long
Right.
period of time. And we've had very few in the
So
county.
you must have a kinship with Kathy Hochul, because she was the Erie County
I
Clerk? and-
absolutely knew Kathy when she was county clerk. She was a great county clerk, and
Well, I'm
has
sure you wouldn't
since
say as a
moved
good-
on to, you
As
know.
a good Democrat, you wouldn't say anything else.
She
but,
was a good county clerk. She
you know.
was, and she moved up the ranks pretty quickly.
You know.
So
Tell me about the DMV part of the job, because, you know, I know Frank Marola in Rensselaer County had a problem with certain DMV functions, and he didn't want to abide by them, and the state forced him to, and it was a court case. Do you ever have that inkling that you really want to, you don't like what the state's imposing? and-
yes, I mean there is kind of a natural rivalry between local government and state government, and for all practical purposes, federal government too. We're all involved in serving the same group of constituents. We're just doing things at a different level, and you can imagine that any person. We're kind of low in the food chain, if you know what I mean, being at the local level. Oftentimes it irks you when the state or the feds make a decision without our concurrence. So there's a little bit of a struggle that goes on oftentimes with the state or the federal government of like, hey fellas, hey folks, we're here, we're all meeting the same needs of our customers, and we would like to have input on that.
So how come you're not as outspoken as a Frank Marola? Frank Marola's a name in the media, you know. How come you don't get out there?
I honestly have tried not to do that.
Yeah,
I mean,
know.
it's kind of a thing where I kind of view this job as a service job. It's an administrative job. I don't really have any political ambition in that way. You know, some people serve in local government hoping to run for a higher level position or whatever.
Like Kathy Hochul.
Exactly,
Yeah.
it's true. I, for crazy reasons, decided in the mid-'80s that I wanted to be the county clerk. So I'm one of these people that actually got the job that I wanted. And I can remember clearly, it was about 85, I said, you know, that would be a great place to be able to contribute to your community and spend your life. And, you know, it's a very rewarding experience because you help people all day long.
You know what I noticed was in Albany County, when Tom Klingon had an opponent, and he always won, he would always adopt what the opponent was saying, whether it was having evening hours
Right.
or it was digitizing
Right.
documents,
Yep.
and you know, whatever the opponent was making a campaign issue, he would then, after his election, would adopt.
Right.
And then, do you? So it seemed to me that having an opponent is healthy because it brought up the issues that.
There's no doubt about it.
Is your office digitized? Do you learn? I mean, you were president of the Association of County Clerks. You were named Clerk of the Year. I mean, do you learn from the other county clerks what you should be doing? Are you lagging behind in Schenectady,
No.
or are you leading and other people are learning from you?
I actually think we've led because we started digitizing our records in July of 1996. So we're going to be celebrating our 20th anniversary next year. A lot of counties took a lot longer to do that. I think one of the reasons I was elected county clerk in '94 is I had a previous record as the receiver of taxes in Rotterdam. What I did is I computerized and automated the tax collection process in Rotterdam. So I'm very fluent with trying to figure out mundane government tasks and how you apply technology to it. And that's kind of what I've done in my career. So I think I got elected to some extent because the voters wanted, I was 37 years old and I was willing to go do that. We've totally changed now the way that we deal with our records. Everything is digitized, all of our land records, all of our court records and things like that. We're in the process of doing backfile conversions to do previous years backwards. So we're kind of going forward and going backwards at the same time.
What about accessing via computers? Let's say a business or an individual wants to have access to the records from their office or home. Are they allowed to do that?
We haven't. Some of our records are online. Our land records and mortgage records are online, and you could access them 24 hours
No
a day.
fee, no fee?
No fee.
Okay, good.
And we have 60,000 property deeds in Schenectady County, so you can imagine how many times that properties have been sold over the year. We're back into the 70s in terms of our digital records, so we really have a long swath of information available.
I once heard just an interesting note that 10% of people move every year. Is
Yes.
that, what would you,
That's-
since you're the records.
No, that's right
might
on
as well ask
target.
the person who's in charge of the records.
That's right on target.
10%,
Yep.
that in itself is like, say, 6,000 deeds or.
Absolutely.
That's a big turnover every
So-
year just to keep track of all that.
Absolutely.
In Albany County, the county clerk actually runs a surplus and gives money back to the county
We do,
coffers.
yeah.
Can you tell us what your budget is and how much you give back to the
Well,
county?
last year we brought in $5.2 million, and our costs were about $1.9 million. So any way that you look at it between the DMV and the clerk's office, if we were a private company, we'd be a very
But the
profitable.
But
DMV
you're-
you get
but
to
you're
keep
giving-
though? That's state money, isn't it?
Well,
I don't
we
understand.
keep a percentage of the transaction. We get to keep 12.7% of the transaction. So in essence, we are still making money because even with the
That's
cost of our
interesting.
employees and their benefits, the reality is we generate, we
That's
handle
interesting.
millions of dollars a year. We do about 100,000 transactions a year in DMV, and we do about 80,000 transactions in the clerk's office.
So you give back $4 million to the county?
Yes. Well, no, last year, I think it was over 5.2 million is what we actually generate.
Wow.
So,
And you don't make hay of this in the
Well-
Gazette? You don't come out and put a news release out and say, look what we're doing?
we do on occasion. We try to certainly make sure our county legislators are aware that we're a very profitable agency.
Well, yeah.
We're fortunate in the sense that we generate revenue. So we have something where other departments, in our county, there's like 35 different departments. Well, we're one of the few that actually generate fees
Right.
from the state, the federal government, or the locality.
So how, so when you, so how many employees do you have?
Right now I have 32.
Okay, so when you give back 5.2 million, do you think that you could save 200,000 for yourself and hire more people?
Well, that is a constant battle I have with my county legislature, who oftentimes, because of tax cap issues, are looking for economies. And I try to explain to them sometime that if we cut too deeply into our personnel, that's going to affect our service. And the reality is people have the ability of going to other county offices to do their business. You don't have to go to the Schenectady DMV. You can go to the one in Albany. You can go to the one in Clifton Park.
Why are
And-
they giving you a hard time if you generate so much money? Meaning if you went go, like Mark's
Yeah.
question would be 32 employees, hey, I need a
Well,
few more
they're
hands
chazas,
over
they're
there.
chazas.
Right.
They want the money for themselves.
I'm
as
sure if
much
they
as-
were here, they would talk to you a lot about Medicaid funding, various other
They need
problems
money
that
for
they
something.
have.
Right.
And I do appreciate that. I do understand that. Like I say, I try to keep a low-key approach to all this. I try to be non-confrontational with people.
Well, you're succeeding.
I think being diplomatic sometimes is more helpful than not. There are some people who are involved in government and politics that love to kind of beat their chest and rant and rave and all that. I'm actually at the point in my life where usually if I see a newspaper reporter, I'm not looking for any press. It usually means that there might be some bad news that I might have to deal with. So I kind of employ the strategy of trying to stay out of the newspapers as much as I can.
So you're on the
so let
Jewish
me-
View
yeah,
over
I
here.
know.
So
I'm
we
glad to
appreciate
do
you.
things
But
like
we're having,
this.
but we're having fun here.
I enjoy getting the opportunity to get word out about the kind of things that we
Yeah,
do.
So
I
you
think
have
it's
4
important.
deputy county clerks. How much do they earn each?
Most of them are in the middle 60, 65.
And how
The
much-
highest one is 75. I make 95.
95.
But yeah, so.
Now, some of these names, some of these deputy clerks have popular or familiar last names to me. Mary Ellen Brem,
Yeah,
related to Bob Brem.
it's his wife, yes.
Yes. Okay, and he's the commissioner of the Board of Elections?
He
or-
was the commissioner.
So what's he now?
He works at the State Board of Elections
Yeah,
now.
he's at the
He's
state
the
now.
executive director of the State
Okay,
Board.
that's why. Okay.
And and type of thing. His wife, when I went to hire my deputies, I was frankly looking for people who either came from the legal community or retail. And why retail? Because we deal with people all
Customer
the time.
service.
And I wanted customer service. So Mrs. Brem, who was my deputy, actually was in the jewelry business. And somebody might say, what does that have to
Yeah,
do
I
with
know,
the
I'm
county
shaking
clerk's
my
office?
head, yeah.
But you get to deal with customers and you have
Okay.
those people skills, and those things are terribly important.
All right, Jazinski. You have Kara.
Yes.
And Anthony, Tony? is-
Her father is Tony,
Okay.
and I hired Carol when she was 23 years old. She was a student at Nazareth College and graduated. I was really impressed with her. I had some people who thought perhaps she was a little too young to put in that position,
But you put her in as a deputy clerk
I
at
did.
23.
I did. I did.
And it had nothing to do with her father being a county
No,
legislator.
No. As a matter of fact, I'm sure I had some people scratching their head thinking she's too young for that position. But I wanted somebody who was smart. I wanted somebody who was technologically capable, and people
Yeah.
that are younger have less phobias about technology. She also speaks Spanish, which, believe it or not, is a big asset to me in the DMV.
Well, because of the Guyanese? But the Guyanese speak French, don't they?
It's more the Latino, Hispanic
Latino.
community. The demographics have changed in the 40 years that I've been aware of things. We serve different types of customers now, and we have different language and various cultural things that we have to deal with now that you didn't a generation ago.
So how old is she now?
She's like 27.
Oh, so she's
So-
so let me, Jeffrey Moret?
Yeah, he's somebody who worked for Price Chopper for 36, 37 years. Again, customer service was somebody,
But
he's a store manager.
How is he related to Moret's King Steakhouse?
I believe it's a...
Which is a landmark.
right, it's a distant...
I don't know about that.
There
That's
is
not
some
close.
relation, I'm not exactly sure.
There's a related to Tony Moret, who's the original owner.
Right, there's some relation, it's like a second cousin or something like
not
that.
close.
So,
Okay, no.
And
Okay.
like I say, I hired him because he had worked at Price Chopper, was a store manager, ran a store. And again, because we deal with so many human interactions, I need people in the clerk's office that are very skilled at people skills. Because oftentimes we're telling people no,
Yeah.
and that's a hard skill because they're used to people telling them yes. I mean, we routinely deal with people who, well, they might have 3 speeding tickets and they haven't paid any of them. And we have to diplomatically say to them, like, we can't renew your driver's license till you pay for those tickets. And sometimes they get angry about it. And we have to kind of employ all of our people skills to try to say, hey, folks, this is the real world. We're not trying to be judgmental about any of this. Everybody makes mistakes. But if you had 3 speeding tickets and you didn't pay any of them, you got to expect some consequences to your action.
So, and I don't want to leave out Cynthia Reedy. I mean, she doesn't have a last name that's familiar to me.
No, Cynthia was somebody who worked in the clerk's office and kind of worked her way up through the
Okay.
ranks. I wanted somebody who had started, kind of as an entry-level clerk and had worked up. So we have a good group of...
You have a good team.
I feel very confident about that. I feel
That's
very good. They work hard. We get a lot of good comments about the services we provide.
Now, I also want to, because we're running out of time, I don't want to miss the point that you also clear the pistol permits.
We do. One of our
Instead of the sheriff, you do this?
Well, what happens is it's in combination. There are some counties that the sheriff's office does it all. We're involved in the application process and gathering. We work very closely with the judges that issue permits, and we are very involved in the mid-90s, Sheriff Barnes, myself, and Judge Idens felt that if we were going to give somebody the license to carry a pistol, we didn't think it was an unreasonable requirement for them to take safety training courses. So what happened is, starting in the mid-90s, we started working with various ballistics instructors about courses. So now in order to qualify for a permit within Schenectady County, you really have to take a safety course. And it usually goes on for 6 hours or so. It's kind of a long thing. We also have developed in the last 5 years for people that have a carried concealed permit, which means that they can carry a gun all the time. We felt that that was an extra special responsibility. So we now make them take an advanced training course and things like that. We've been the leaders in this area in terms of gun safety issues. And I noticed that Saratoga County is just going to this process now. Mm-hmm. And I read about it in the papers, and they, kind of make it out like it's a big deal, which, by the way, it is. But I kind of laugh because we have been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah, but they're less rural now. I mean, aside from
Exactly.
Galway and a few other places,
Exactly.
they're less rural now that with Malta,
Yes.
developing the way it's developing. And
Yeah,
all that
and there's been a great increase in the number of gun permits issued in the
Right.
last couple of years.
How many do you issue?
We used to do, for the first 19 years I was county clerk, we did about 200 new permits a year, and the last year we were about 800 a year.
Wow. People
So
are getting
it's
scared over it.
it's the SAFE Act and various other things like that. And we used to do about 1,500 amendments, which is somebody essentially adding or subtracting a gun on their permit. Last year we did over 6,000.
Wow.
So there's a lot of activity going on.
Cha-ching,
Interesting.
cha-ching.
It's
They all
well,
cost money too.
it's been a growth industry for us. I mean, we've spent much more time on it than we used to. Is
Yeah.
really the truth of the matter. And with the controversy over the SAFE Act, it's certainly we get 1 million people talking about gun control now in ways that really they didn't
Right.
really talk about it a lot.
Mark, we're out of time, but it was very interesting. So we want to give you our blessing that
Thank
you
you.
continue the good work that you're doing and continue doing with good health. And we'll
Thank you.
talk to you again and
Thank you
tell
very
us what
much.
the good things that you're
Continued
doing.
success.
Thank
yes.
you very much.